Hello, today I'm back and I'm going to be talking some more about my Ainslie knitting machine. So this is an antique knitting machine and this is only part of it. I started taking it apart in the previous episode and then I ran into a problem where this inner cylinder is stuck into this outer carriage and it should rotate it freely, but it does not. After posting the video, I got a bunch of advice on what I could do potentially. And there's some conflicting advice, but it seems like most people believe that they used a really inexpensive pot metal, which is why I noticed these cracks. I'm not sure if, yeah, you should be able to see this inner cylinder is cracked a lot. And I was like, I don't exactly know how that happened in the last episode, but maybe it was something with sort of how it was formed. And yeah, evidently they used really inexpensive pot metal for these cylinders sometimes. Just to keep the cost of the knitting machine down. And now, you know, what is it, like 80 to 100 years later, it hasn't held up. I don't think it was necessarily a bad idea. If it really reduced the cost of the machine initially and it lasted 80 years, that's pretty good. But what I've got to do now is I've got to figure out a way to get this cylinder out, because evidently if they use this inexpensive pot metal, you often get these cracks and it actually expands a little bit and gets jammed into this outer case. Not surprisingly, with all of these cracks in it, this metal is very fragile, so you have to be gentle when trying to remove it or you're going to damage it. Some people said this outer case can also be made out of inexpensive metal, and I mean, just looking at this, I see no cracks in this outer carriage portion, so I don't think mine is. I think my outer carriage is going to be really strong. I'm not going to test it, but I did, you know, I tried to get this inner cylinder out already and did a little bit of damage to the cylinder. You can see right there with, I mean, there's already other places where it's cracking and breaking off, so it's not much different than the rest of the cylinder, but I do want to try to get it out to see if I can save it. I'm not sure. If I can't save it, there are places where you can buy replacement cylinders, and I'll talk about that if I go that route. You can also 3D print cylinders, which kind of makes sense for the direction I'm going. I don't want to 3D print a machine knitter, but I do want to look into building like a sort of a higher quality one than 3D printed, but less cost than a steel one, and find some middle ground there. And I'm thinking maybe, I mean, it'll certainly use injection molded plastic parts, nice durable, maybe glass reinforced nylon, but I might have some metal parts in there as well. So anyways, that's the whole development process there. The first step to doing that, I really wanted to understand one of these old knitting machines, and that's sort of what I'm doing here. So with that said, let's see if I can show you a technique that works for getting out the cylinder when it's jammed. So what I want to do here is I want to support this outer portion from below and then try to force the cylinder down through, because the cylinder has to come out in this direction. So I think if I can support this outer piece and then sort of force the cylinder out that way, it should work. And before this, I've been, so there's lots of different types of penetrating oil. I just got one at my local hardware store. This is the one I got, but it's nothing special. Some people online said certain ones work better. I don't think anyone said this one works better. I do think that soaking it in some penetrating oil, I did mine for like 4 days. I was gone camping for the weekend, so it was just a convenient amount of time. So now it's been sitting, and I'm hoping I can get it free now. So I just want to figure out a way to sort of hold the outer parts in a few places. So I do think this outer piece is strong, but I don't want to test that too much. So right now I'm holding it in 2 spots. If you really wanted to be careful, you could create a better jig that would hold it in more positions, but I'll do that for now. And then this inner part is really weak, so if I can hold it with more, hit it sort of so that it hits in more places. So if I put this, I just cut a few chunks of 2x4, and this one will be touching in 4 different spots on this inner cylinder. So let's just see how this goes. Yeah, so I don't know if you can see on the video, but it did move down a little bit. I had to hit it pretty hard. Don't know how I could do it much more gently. I'm seeing a few cracks there. I mean, maybe if you would cut like a plywood piece that really sat against all the corners, that would be more gentle, but I'm not going to take the time to create a specialized jig. But that would be a more gentle. This way I'm touching 4 spots on it, so this is pretty good. There we go. I think it came out. Oh, I hope it came out. Well, it came out. Hope it didn't. Uh-oh. So, we'll see. So these, I know, are supposed to sit somewhere in here like this. I don't know if they're supposed to come out or not. I'm going to do a little research now. But I did successfully get out the cylinder. Let's take a quick look at it. So an important thing is to not damage any of these upper fins. That's pretty important. There are videos online on how to repair those, but I mean, I have cracks, but those are not new cracks. Those are just from this weak pot metal. I do think of getting it out because it's such a delicate piece of metal. I do think like that little crack there. This is where I damaged it a little bit before, and I think that's it. This was already there. So there was already some damage there, but I think I did a pretty good job. Now the question is, can I reuse this? I did. One other thing I'll mention now is I did use a calipers like this to sort of see whether it was round before. Some people said they sometimes warp and they're no longer round. So this one, it's out of round by like 0.5 millimeter, which is a huge amount in my concern, but on this kind of a machine, I don't know if that's going to matter. But now I'm going to go offline for a little while and sort of do a little bit more research. I'm happy that I got this out. A lot of people will clean everything very early on, but I want to see if I can get it working before I do a bunch of cleaning. I'll talk about cleaning probably as one of my later steps because there's some great advice online and I can help with that. But if you're like, oh, you should clean this, it's all dirty, I'm like, I don't want to spend a lot of time cleaning it until I can figure out whether I'm going to be able to reuse the cylinder and if all the other parts are fully working. So I'm kind of going through this, hitting the most important things first. That's sort of how I work through problems like this. Okay, it's been about an hour, so I have made some progress in that time, so I'll show you what I've done. First off, we have carriage and the cylinder, and now things fit together. And I'll show you a little bit about that. But first I want to put in, I think these might be called cams. I'm not actually sure, so I can either put the cam in this way, or I can put the cam in that way. So I will try putting it in this way. So the cam is going to go in that way. If people think that's incorrect, let me know. I'll flip them around. But I can also, once I get hooks, so this is all for the hook system. Once I get the hooks, I can definitely tell if I got them in the right way or the wrong way. I do wonder, like, there's nothing holding these in. So every time you take out the cylinder, you're going to risk losing these. So does anybody with a version like this know if there's something that should be holding these little cams in place? Because it just seems like a weird design not to have that. But once it gets in there and I get it all the way down like this, it definitely rotates, no problem now. And I'll show you how I did that in a little bit. But the other piece that goes in here is this. And I may have to do a little bit more because this still fits kind of snug. But even with all that stuff in there, it still rotates. I may do a little more sanding on this cylinder. But the way this is going to work is the hook goes in this, at least the way I think this works, is there's a whole bunch of hooks all in that cylinder, and they've got little bumps on them, and they're going to ride up here, and then they'll fall down here, right here, and then go under this one, and that's sort of why those mechanisms are there. So this will flip up, and if you're going the other way, then it'll ride over this one down, and then go under here. So that's the basic mechanism of what they're trying to do. And by the hooks going up and down with the latching hook system that they've developed like a long time ago, 100 to 200 years ago or something, it sort of hooks the yarn in the right way to form a knit stitch. But I'll show you that once I get some hooks. I've actually already talked to my supplier in China, and they've found some hooks that we think might work. We're going to have to verify that, but they're going to send me some samples, and I'll see if those work. If those work, then I'll be able to show you with the hooks. And otherwise, I might order some hooks from somewhere in the U.S. that helps match your hook to your cylinder. But I'm pretty happy that everything fits together now, and I sort of understand the cam system. I think to make more progress, I need to get some hooks, though, so those are on order. I actually ordered them about a week ago, but I didn't say I was in any kind of rush, so it's probably going to be a while before I have them. Okay, so how did I get this cylinder to fit? Because before it was not fitting. Let me show you that. The first thing I tried was just some sandpaper, and I was sanding on it for about 10 seconds, and I realized that's going to take forever. So then I went to a powered sander. That's this jobby. So basically I turned on the belt sander, and I put some gloves on, a mask on, and I sanded down the outer part, and it took a long time. I mean, this is very weak steel, but it still is steel. So with that setup, it took probably about an hour, almost that full time I've been gone. But I did let it cool. Like, I didn't want it to get really hot because the metal's so weak. If metal gets hot, then it expands, and I was afraid this thing might crack further. So I'm not really sure like if that's going to be a problem at the temperatures I was getting it at. It did get too hot to hold without gloves, but it didn't get like super hot. So I was just taking it cautious, took some breaks to let it cool down, and it ended up working. I mean, it really fits quite nicely now. So if anybody has a cylinder that doesn't fit, during this episode I sort of show you how I removed it with a hammer or some blocks of wood, and then I sanded it down on my belt sander, and it seems to be fitting well. I don't know how long it'll be until the next episode because I gotta wait for the hooks to come, but once I get some hooks, I'll show you what kind of progress I can make with this antique machine knitter. Thanks for watching.